Hi guys, today we will discuss about the scalars and vectors in your physics. Okay, so if we talk about any physical quantities, right, which can be measured. Now, any physical quantity can either be considered as scalar or it can be considered as vector. Now, basically, the scalar quantities are all those quantities which you can just measure with only magnitudes. So, when I say only magnitude, I mean to say, for example, like the mass of a certain object. Let us say this is my object having a mass of 5 kg, right? So this 5 is what is a magnitude. It represents a numerical value, and kg gives me an idea that this is a quantity of mass. But when I say vector, so the vector quantities are all those quantities which have magnitude plus direction, as well as it must obey the laws of vector or the laws of physics. Now, what are these laws of vectors? That is what we are going to discuss in this particular sessions. Now, for example, here if I say a force on the same object of mass m, now if I say that this object is experiencing a force of 5 Newton. Now, when I say the force of 5 Newton is acting on this particular object of mass m, now this 5 Newton, where it is acting, it can be act in this direction, it can act in this direction, it can act in this direction. So the direction is not specified, so the information is incomplete. So if we don't know the direction, we cannot draw the force. So those quantities which required a direction to give a complete information, that will be considered as vector quantities. So if you look at physics, you will be dealing with many different types of physical quantities as you approach towards the physics syllabus. So all the physical quantities, it will be measurable in one form or the other. So either it can be a scalar quantity or it can be a vector quantity. Now you should know the basic difference between scalars and vectors in order to deal with the equations and the numerical and the concept of physics. It is very important for you to understand the basic understanding of vectors and how to deal with the vectors. Okay. So for example, 5 Newton. So I will write down 5 Newton force is acting on this object in east direction or towards the right hand side or plus x, whatever you can say, but has to be mentioned. Okay, so this is the basic difference between scalars and vectors. You can name various different types of categorize into scalars and vectors as you approach towards the syllabus. To give you a brief, so this is the basic difference. These all are your vector quantities and these all are your scalar quantities. So as you will approach, displacement is a vector, distance is a scalar, and so on. Okay. So one more thing, like if I add one more mass, so what's the basic difference? You can say scalar, you can add as an algebraic sum like 5 kg plus 3 kg, right? So this will give you total 8 kg. But if I say of vector quantities like the force, what we have considered, right? The force is a vector quantity. So let us say 5 Newton is acting in this direction and 3 Newton is acting in this direction. So you cannot just add 5 plus 3 because the directions are different. Now, how to solve these things, that we are going to discuss, and this is the most important part. What will be the resultant force acting on this object? That is what we have to look after. Now, before we move on, we should know a basic representation, how we represent a vector. Now, basically, a vector is represented by a straight line with an arrow. Now, this arrow shows the head, which shows the direction of the vector, and the tail, this is called the tail. Okay, so this is the head of the vector, this is the tail of the vector, and the length of the arrow. Okay, so this length denotes the magnitude. It denotes what? It denotes the magnitude, how much large a vector is. For example, if I want to draw 5 Newton, so let me count the box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now if I say this is 5 Newton force, now if I want to show a 7 Newton force or a 8 Newton force, 5, 6, 7, 8. So these are 8. So this is 8 Newton force. So the length of the arrow shows the magnitude of that particular vector. Okay. Now this will be the head, this will be the tail, and this is how we draw. Now if I want to show minus 5 Newton, so what I will do is I will just copy this and paste it, and I will just remove the arrow and I will put it in the opposite direction. So minus denotes that only the direction changes. So here positive and negative are denoting directions. This you have to remember. So if one side you have taken positive, automatically the opposite side will be considered as negative. Okay, so this is how we represent a vector.